Namaskar, God and Goddesses. A lot of times you guys are getting your chart via email once you purchase your first reading from me. And it's important to at least have a little idea of what you're looking at. There's so much information to process, but not really understanding what you're looking at. So we're going to go through a very basic level, because some of you who are watching this would have done the first level reading. What is a birth chart? It's basically like a snapshot of the sky. And the link is right here, and the link will also be in the comment in the description for your birth chart to know where your signs and your planets are in your chart, and also getting a reading to understand your life foundation, how and why it is the way it is, to also have a better understanding in terms of your career, where you make your money from, your relationship, your spouse, understanding what kind of relationship you'll have, or having a better understanding of your current situation or situation of where you will be in this life. The link is right here. If you think it helped you, please like. If you have any questions pertaining to what I spoke about today or in any other video, then please comment and ask me below, and I'll make a video on it. At the time that you were born, whatever is in place at that time is basically gets imprinted as your chart. But not only that, the birth chart is literally your body. You can see every single body part, from your head to where your feet are, to your knees, to your joints, to your blood, of your birth chart. Many times I tell people, many times people view their birth chart as like a separate thing from them that they can manipulate and change. But you need to understand that the birth chart, it is your literal body. It's the reason why it has the name birth chart. Because without you being in the physical body that you landed in, you wouldn't have a birth chart to begin with. There is a snapshot of your birth chart which determines which zodiac is in which house and which planets are in which house, which nakshatras you have, everything. Everyone has 12 houses and everyone has 12 zodiac signs. And you can't have less than that. Sometimes, especially I see with the Western astrology pop culture, sometimes they dictate that certain signs they don't like and certain signs they like. In cosmology, Ayurveda, astrology, everything, it does not have good or bad. It doesn't exist. You have things that may impact things in a more malefic or more benevolent way, but it doesn't necessarily mean good or bad. That is pertaining to the person's lifestyle, determining if it's going to be good or bad. 12 houses and 12 zodiac signs. You can't have more and you can't have less. And sometimes if I don't know your chart and I'm doing a live, like on TikTok, for example, I notice that when I want to verify if the person has a correct chart, and lots of times I get it from a Western astrologer, I ask them, tell me which sign is in this house. Okay, which sign is in this other house? And if they tell me something that is impossible, I do not do their chart live on the spot, because I'll get information wrong, and they're also giving me wrong information. How? Because the zodiac signs are always in a chronological order. Chronological meaning they're always in a specific order. They never match and cross from each other. So if you have, let's say for example, Pisces in the first house, then you're going to have Aries in the second house. You're going to have Aquarius in the 12th house. That's just how it works. On the other hand, the planets, also known as grahas in Sanskrit, can be in any house. So the order of the zodiac sign, because I remember when I was first learning this, I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to remember this in order? There's like 12. It starts off with Aries and end with Pisces. So Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo. What's next? Tula in Sanskrit, but is known as Libra in English. There is Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. Now, for the houses, just how there's 12 zodiac signs, there are also only 12 houses. And those are always in chronological order as well, as you can see here. The basic level. Even if any of the zodiac signs move to any of the other houses, meaning that the wheel that they're on ends up shifting and moving to other houses in your chart, the soul of that zodiac sign still resides in that house, meaning that Aries is the first zodiac sign. It will always represent the first house. Taurus will always represent the second house. So the moment you know chronological order of the zodiac signs, you automatically have an understanding representation or representing each house and what each house represents on a basic level. Now, it doesn't mean that they are duplicates of each other. The first house means something, Aries means something. Taurus means something, the second house means something, all the way up to Pisces in the 12th house. For example, the first house represents your body and it represents your head. It represents the host of your brain. But Aries itself represents your brain. The reason why is because whatever in your chart activates Aries based on where it is, it activates your brain and gets those neurons going. And that's the location of where that makes you feel alive, or that makes you feel like your individuality, because it is the very source from which your head is from. Now, on a very basic level, I won't go into depth in this video on what all the things are represented based on each house, but on a basic level, first house represents you, second house represents your family, it represents what you like to eat, it represents your speech and the way your voice sounds. Third house is your siblings, it's your neighbors, it's your friends, it's your wrist, your ears, your eyes, and it's also the way you communicate, the way you use your voice. And it's also very specific to the right side of the body, so right eye, right ear. Then the fourth house is your mother, your home, the home you grew up in, your homeland where you were born. Then you have the fifth house, which represents your spine, your stomach, children, romance. Then you have the sixth house, which represents your intestines. It represents enemies, obstacles. It represents illnesses and diseases and debt. Then you have the seventh house, which represents marriage, partnerships, import, export. Then you have the eighth house, which represents unexpected events, sudden ups and downs, surgery, transformation, rebirth. Then you have the ninth house, which represents luck. Like fifth house, which represents academics and school, the ninth house would represent things like university, or college, or higher knowledge that you can only get by going on a pilgrimage, or going overseas, having a teacher, guru, or a guide, or a mentor. It also represents your father. Then the 10th house represents the jungle. It's your duty, the things that you're here to perform in society, which is why we call it the house of career. Although there are many other ways that we determine to see how and what career you should be doing, the 10th house is that main house we look at to see the basic of what karma you're here to fulfill, what karma you have here to do. It's considered the karma house. Then we have the 11th house, which is represented by Aquarius. And if you remembered in the order of which each house is being represented in the order of the zodiac signs, you would know that the 11th house is Aquarius, and that is the house of gains. It's the gains that you get from the karma and the things that you do as work. So the gains you get from it, all your wishes, dreams, and desires that you try to achieve from 10th house karma and duties that you're fulfilling. And it's also social networking, large organizations. And unlike the 6th house, that's the house of pets, the 11th house is wild animals, big animals, endangered animals. Then we have the 12th house, the house of bed pleasures, the house of dreams. Dreams meaning when you sleep and you're dreaming. It's even a house of premonition, space, otherworldly things, meditation, yoga, but it's also the house of isolation, where you can find yourself isolated. So it also represents things like not only the bedroom where there's bed pleasures, but jail, ashrams, asylums, hospitals. There are 2 different kinds of charts that can be used in Jyotish astrology, Vedic astrology, to read a chart. The only one that you're going to be seeing here is the North Indian chart. The reason why is because a astrologer is having a more predominant energy of Jupiter, Guru, the Sanskrit name Guru, Jupiter, in their chart. They'll be more prone to reading off the South Indian chart. But if their Venus, Shukra, is more prominent in their chart, they're more likely to use the North Indian chart. My Venus is more prominent in my chart, so it's more easier for me to read with the North Indian chart. Although I will warn you that in general, it is easier to read the North Indian chart. Reason being is that the South Indian chart, the ascendant has 4 different locations where it can be. Whereas for the North Indian chart, it always stays in the same place. And because of this, I never been able to get used to the South Indian chart because it's just more Jupiter dominant. So whenever you get a report from me, your chart is always going to be the North Indian chart. No matter which chart you look at, whether it's your moon chart, your divisional chart, your D10, your D1, or just the main one that you should be focusing on, which is your birth chart, it is always going to be a North Indian chart and not a South Indian chart. But once you get your report the first time, you won't need me to send you the report again. You would just need to go to the 2nd and 3rd and 4th level of your reading. So if I was to ask you where is your ascendant or where is your first house, then you're always going to refer to the first house that is there. It'll always be the same. Also, your ascendant in Sanskrit is called Lagna. Your ascendant is always going to be in the first house. It's never going to be in any other house. The ascendant is the sign that is currently rising in the east at the time that you were born. And a lot of times people ask, all of the planets are in the chart, but where is Earth? Well, naturally, Earth does exist in your chart, but it would be your first house because the snapshot of your birth chart is being taken on Earth, but outward into space where the stars are. So naturally, the first house, where the rising sign that is becoming your rising or your lagna that's rising in the east is rising in the east of the planet Earth based on wherever you're located. So Earth is in the chart, but it's always in the same place because we're just always on Earth. Another thing about reading your chart or understanding your chart is the direction that you read your chart. Unlike in the West, where we read everything from left to right, when it comes to your chart, you're reading your chart counterclockwise, not clockwise, meaning from the right to left. So from the first house, there is your second house to the left, then from the second house. So from the first house, there is the second house here. From the second house, there is the third house here. From the third house, there is the fourth house here. And from the 4th house, there's the 5th house, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Usually the zodiac signs are shown via numbers, and when you are a Vedic astrologer, you're familiar with which zodiac sign is being represented by which numbers. If you know them in chronological order, then automatically you're going to know that this one right here is Aries, and you will know that this one is Scorpio because the number 8 is there. This one is Pisces because number 12 is here. And as you can see, the next one is 1, which is Aries. So we go from this house, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Sometimes don't do the mistake that other people make where they think that this is the 1st house because number 1 is here. This is representing the zodiac sign. The 1st house is always going to be here. And if you ever want a little bit of a guidance, on the side of the chart will always say 1st house, 2nd house, 3rd house, 4th house, all the way to 12th house here. So you'll always have some kind of guidance. And another reminder you can use is that the ascendant was always in the 1st house, which you see as AS right here. The zodiac sign switches every 2.5 hours, which is why sometimes when a person does not have the time of birth, or if they're not too sure about their time of birth, if a person is not sure about their time of birth, it can completely change their chart. Meaning that the zodiac sign, just within that 2.5 hours to few minutes difference, can give you a completely different placement of zodiac signs in your chart. Every zodiac sign in every house is 30 degrees. Meaning that if you have, let's say, the 1st house, so if you were to take this sign here, Gemini in the 1st house, every house is of 30 degrees. Meaning that it's broken down into 3 sections. Excuse my writing here. It's broken down into 3 sections, and in total it makes 30 degrees. Each zodiac sign is 30 degrees long. All of these zodiac signs get completed through each house every 2.5 hours. You can be born at 0 degrees Gemini, or you can be born at 30 degrees Gemini, or even 27.8 Gemini ascendant. But you are in that 1st box. That Gemini is going to be in that 1st box, even if it's right on the degree. Ascendant. Remember that this is the ascendant. You see the AS here. Now, the reason why you see different numbers on the chart is because the software is assuming that you, as the reader, has prior knowledge on how to read the chart. So they use the numbers to show you where the zodiac signs are. The chronological order of the zodiac sign is very important so you don't get confused. Aries is number 1, that Taurus is number 2, that Gemini is number 3, that Cancer is number 4, that Leo is number 5, that 6 is Virgo, 7 is Libra, 8th is Scorpio, 9th is Sagittarius, 10th is Capricorn, 11th is Aries, and 12th is Pisces. So as long as you can remember that, whenever you look at any of the houses, you automatically know that Virgo is in 4th house, meaning that Virgo comes into the 6th place of the chronological zodiac belt. So the numbers that you get on your report when you get your reading that's in your chart are simply the zodiac signs in your chart, not the houses. Now, when it comes to the planets, they're all going to be sitting in different signs and in different houses. K2, Sun, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Moon, Rahu in K2. they're going to be sitting in some house and in some sign. Giving you the example of Sun. Where is Sun located? Giving you the example of Venus. Where's Venus located? Right here. But which house is it sitting in? The 10th house. And which sign is it sitting in? I'll give you a second. Correct. It's in Pisces, last zodiac sign of the zodiac belt. Because this is a Gemini ascendant, Venus sitting in the 10th house for a Gemini ascendant is going to be in Pisces because they're always in chronological order. Let's say if Aries was here as the ascendant instead, then if you move the zodiac belt by 2, 1, 2, what would end up being in this house? 1, 2, Capricorn would be in the 10th house. So these boxes, they always stay fixed. They never move. First house will always be here. You see the first house mark here. 5th house will always be here. You see the 5th house marker here, and so on and so forth. So the only thing that changes are the zodiac signs every 2.5 hours and the planets. But at least now you know what are the houses, what are these signs, and how these planets move. Because the zodiac signs are always moving through the houses at a certain speed, but planets have different speeds. They can move a little bit faster, they can move a little bit slower. Some of them retrograde and they go backwards into a previous house. So when you do get your report, or when you look at your report again and you look at your birth chart, automatically you should be looking immediately at your first house, because that's where everything starts. It starts with you. Thank you, God and goddesses.
I'm